Imagine an entire city, thriving, full of people, markets, homes, and temples, simply emptying out. No clear invasion, no obvious catastrophe recorded. Just people gone and stone left behind to weather the centuries in silence. It sounds impossible, and yet it has happened again and again throughout human history. Whole settlements and civilizations that rose, flourished, and then disappeared or collapsed in ways that still aren't fully understood. Some left ruins, some left clues, and some left almost nothing at all. Today, we're looking at ancient places that vanished without a full explanation. Let's start with a famous one. Number 1. The Lost Colony of Roanoke. In 1587, a group of English settlers, around 117 men, women, and children, established a colony on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. It was meant to be England's first permanent settlement in the New World. Shortly after arriving, the colony's governor, John White, sailed back to England for supplies. He expected to be gone briefly. Instead, war between England and Spain delayed him for 3 long years. When White finally returned in 1590, he found the settlement deserted. The houses had been carefully taken down. There was no sign of a battle, no bodies, no clear evidence of a struggle. The only clues were 2 carvings. The word Croatoan, carved into a post of the fort's palisade, and the letters CRO, carved into a nearby tree. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, now called Hatteras Island, and of the Native American people who lived there, who had been on friendly terms with the English. For centuries, the fate of these colonists was one of America's greatest mysteries, fueling theories of every kind: a massacre by hostile forces, death by starvation or disease, an attempt to sail home in small boats that ended at the bottom of the sea. Some of those theories have aged badly. Spanish records, which were meticulous about military actions, contain no account of wiping out the colony. And the physical scene White found, houses carefully taken apart rather than burned or smashed, with no signs of a struggle, points away from sudden violence. But here's where the story has genuinely shifted in recent years. Archaeologists working on Hatteras Island, formerly Croatoan Island, have uncovered English artifacts and notably evidence of English-style metalworking. Tiny flakes of iron called hammerscale, buried in soil layers dating to the right period. That kind of debris is left behind when someone is actually working metal in a place, suggesting English settlers were living and working within the Croatoan community. It fits the carvings almost exactly. The colonists appear to have left to join the friendly people whose name they carved, and gradually assimilated. The calm, deliberate way the settlement was dismantled supports this far better than any catastrophe. It's not a fully closed case, but the famous vanishing may have been less a supernatural disappearance and more a small, struggling group quietly folding into another society to survive. Number 2. The Maya collapse. Across the jungles of southern Mexico and Central America lie the ruins of one of the ancient world's most brilliant civilizations. The Maya built towering pyramids, sprawling cities, sophisticated astronomy, and a complex writing system. At their height, cities like Tikal and Copan were home to tens of thousands of people. And then, over roughly the 8th and 9th centuries AD, many of the great southern lowland cities were abandoned. Populations plummeted. Construction of grand monuments stopped. The cities were slowly reclaimed by the jungle. It's important to be careful here. The Maya people did not vanish. Millions of their descendants live in the region today, still speaking Maya languages and keeping many traditions alive. What collapsed was a particular political and urban system in certain regions, the world of the great southern lowland cities with their divine kings and towering monuments. But why those flourishing cities were abandoned is still debated. The leading explanations point to a combination of factors rather than a single cause. Scientists studying climate records, including mineral deposits in caves and sediment cores from lakes, have found evidence of severe and prolonged droughts during roughly the period of the collapse, which would have been devastating for cities dependent on stored rainwater and seasonal agriculture. But drought alone probably wasn't the whole story. Researchers also point to overpopulation straining the land, deforestation and soil exhaustion, intensifying warfare between rival city-states, and the breakdown of the political and religious authority that held these societies together. When a king's central promise, to keep the gods satisfied and the rains coming, visibly failed during a drought, the entire social order could lose its legitimacy. Untangling exactly how these pressures combined and why the collapse struck some regions hard while others carried on or even thrived remains one of the great questions of archaeology. Number 3. The Indus Valley Civilization. Around 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, in what is now Pakistan and northwestern India, one of the world's earliest great urban civilizations flourished. The Indus Valley Civilization, sometimes called the Harappan Civilization, built remarkably advanced cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. These weren't crude settlements. They had carefully planned street grids laid out at right angles, sophisticated drainage and sewage systems that were ahead of their time, standardized bricks, and large public structures. This was a society of impressive organization and engineering. There's another striking detail about these people. Archaeologists have found relatively little evidence of grand palaces, huge temples, or the kind of monuments to kings and warfare that dominate other early civilizations. Their cities suggest a society that may have valued trade, cleanliness, and organization in ways that still intrigue researchers. And yet, over a period of centuries, these cities declined and were largely abandoned. The people appear to have gradually moved away, particularly toward the east. What caused this? Once again, there's no single confirmed answer. Researchers point to major shifts in climate and monsoon patterns, along with the changing courses or drying of the rivers the civilization depended on. These cities were built around reliable water and fertile floodplains, so if a major river shifted its path or dwindled, the farming that fed a city could collapse, forcing people to relocate. Some rivers that once supported dense settlement may have shifted or dried up entirely over time. Adding to the mystery, the Indus people left behind a written script, found on seals and artifacts, that has never been deciphered, meaning we cannot read their own account of who they were or what happened to them. So we're left studying their remarkably well-planned but silent cities, admiring their engineering while trying to understand why such an advanced society faded. Now for the supporting cast. These are a bit shorter, but no less intriguing. Cahokia, near present-day St. Louis in the United States, once stood the largest pre-Columbian city north of Mexico. Cahokia was a major urban center with enormous earthen mounds, including one of the largest earthworks in the Americas, and a population that may have numbered in the tens of thousands at its peak around 1,000 years ago. This was a genuine city, with plazas, neighborhoods, and monumental construction in a place many people don't associate with large pre-Columbian urban life at all. Then, over the following centuries, it was gradually abandoned. Theories include environmental stress, flooding from the nearby rivers, deforestation and resource depletion around a growing population, along with political and social upheaval, or some combination of all of these, but no single explanation has been confirmed. A city that may once have rivaled contemporary European towns in size was slowly left to the elements and the mounds it raised. The cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde. In the American Southwest, the ancestral Puebloans built spectacular villages tucked into cliff alcoves, with multi-story stone structures that still cling to the rock today. For generations they lived and farmed there. Then, in the late 1200s AD, they left these dwellings behind. Prolonged drought and environmental hardship are strongly suspected as driving factors, possibly combined with social conflict and change. The people migrated south and their descendants continue in Pueblo communities today. But the sudden departure from these remarkable cliff homes still prompts questions. Angkor. In what is now Cambodia, the Khmer Empire built Angkor, an immense city complex centered on the famous temple of Angkor Wat, supported by a vast and sophisticated network of canals and reservoirs for managing water. At its height, it was one of the largest cities in the pre-industrial world. Over time, its importance declined and much of it was abandoned to the jungle. Researchers have pointed to a combination of severe climate swings between drought and intense flooding that damaged the crucial water infrastructure, along with shifting trade and political changes, but reconstructing the full picture is an ongoing effort. And finally, the settlement of Skara Brae. On the windswept coast of Orkney off Scotland lies a remarkably preserved Stone Age village older than Stonehenge and the pyramids. Its stone houses, complete with built-in stone furniture like beds and shelves, were occupied around 5,000 years ago and then eventually abandoned and buried by sand, only to be uncovered again by a storm in the 19th century. Why the inhabitants ultimately left remains uncertain, with encroaching sand, a shifting climate, and changing coastal conditions among the possibilities, leaving us a strangely intimate, frozen snapshot of a vanished Stone Age way of life, one where you can still see where people slept and stored their belongings. So there you have it, ancient places that our ancestors built and then left behind, sometimes thousands of years ago, in ways we still can't fully explain. Roanoke's settlers may have quietly joined their neighbors rather than truly vanishing. The great Maya cities were swallowed by jungle amid drought and upheaval. The advanced cities of the Indus Valley faded as their rivers and climate shifted, taking their unreadable writing with them. It makes you wonder how fragile even the most impressive societies really are. These weren't failures of primitive people. They were sophisticated communities with engineering, art, astronomy, and organization that can still astonish us today. And yet the right combination of drought, environmental strain, conflict, or slow grinding change was enough to empty their streets and hand their cities back to the sand and jungle. Again and again, the pattern repeats across continents and millennia. A society reaches remarkable heights, depends heavily on a delicate balance of climate and resources, and then that balance tips. And maybe that's the quiet lesson buried in these silent ruins. That no city is permanent. That the ground we build on can change beneath us. And that someday, long after we're gone, someone may stand in our own abandoned places and wonder exactly the same thing. Where did everybody go?